Hey Alottle family, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Cami Ewalt, and today I want to show you guys part 2, or the female version of this race cup. I made it to kind of correlate with obviously her husband's cup, but we doctored it up with glitter and some other fun stuff. So if you are here for that tutorial, stick around and we'll get into it. Alrighty, I've already got my 30-ounce skinny from Stainless Steel Depot sprayed and prepped and taped off, ready to go. And I'm using a neon green kind of iridescent glitter from Grateful Glitters, but I want to make sure that it shows up truly neon green. So I mixed some neon green mica powder into my epoxy because the glitter will sop up a little bit of the color from that, and thus making sure that it's true neon green, not dulled or muted in any way. I have mixed up 5 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm only going to be using probably about 3-ish. I want enough to where some of that color can definitely be grabbed from the glitter, but not so much that you're getting like a wet, matted kind of look. And then I'm just going to pat the cup. This ensures that no lines come through that glitter from the epoxy underneath. So then I'm just going to get a full coverage out of this glitter, and I will make sure to link all of the products I use in this video and even some discount codes for you guys down in the description area. I'm going to take my scissors, tap off any excess, and then immediately take off my tape so that way I don't risk pulling up any of that glitter epoxy if it dries onto the tape. I'm going to set that up and let that cure for about an hour or two before moving on to the next step. I'm then going to take it's about a 1-inch painter's tape, and this is the tape that I used on the male version of this cup in the last video. That's why you see these black markings. I'm going to put it on there to where I think it looks straight, and then make sure by measuring twice, cutting once, and moving on. So then I just place tape down one next to the other, and that middle tape, or the second strip I put on, was just a marker, and I used that one off and on throughout. And along this green glitter area, I'm making sure I get a really good seal, so I'll take my fingernail and just run it across that to make sure that I've got that tape really anchored down there. You want to make sure that once you get all of this tape down, that you do go over it an extra time to make sure you get a very, very solid seal against all the edges of the tape in all of the squares. That way, as little as possible, paint will actually seep under that tape. There might be a little snakeage, but let's minimize as much as we can, right? And once I've got all that tape anchored down, I'm going to mix black acrylic paint in with Mod Podge, and I make sure I get a pretty opaque black. And this is what I'm going to use to 1, base coat these squares, and 2, anchor down my glitter. So you want to make sure you start with your darkest color first and then work later layers into the lighter colors. And I'm just going to work probably 3 to 4 squares at a time, and then dump some glitter on and kind of tap my scissors onto the cup to kind of nestle that glitter in before turning my cup over and tapping the rest of the glitter off. And then once I go through this whole side, by that time this first side is dry again, and so I can just go immediately in with my second coat of paint and then glitter. And then I will immediately take this tape off, let this dry for a good solid hour, probably 2 hours. You want to make sure this is 100% dry, because this next step, after it dries, you're going to take a chip brush and pretty aggressively wipe off all the loose glitter that you can on this. So you want to make sure that this layer is dry completely. And once I had this brushed off, I thought I was going to be smart and just like take this angled brush and go in and make my squares and then glitter, which proved to be super time consuming. Holy buckets. So I got brave and just took some tape and wound up taping off these black squares, and again, just took my fingernail right next to each square or line and made sure I had a really solid seal. I went horizontal and vertical. And then right before I would do a square, I would kind of double ensure that it was sealed down by just rubbing my thumb across it, and proceeded as I did in the last step. This is very much how I did my buffalo check tumbler, so I will definitely link that video down in the description as well if you guys need some extra help in this area, or help with how to anchor your fingers while you're painting to help stabilize yourself. It's got a lot of really good info in that video, and I'll link it in the description below. And after I get done with this whole side, it is already dry, so I just go right into a second layer of the glitter and paint again, and continue on tapping off in between each coat just so I don't get my paint and stuff muddy as I'm working. And then I just take the tape right off and again allow this to set up for about 2 hours so I can aggressively brush off all of this black glitter that's loose and not anchored with the Mod Podge. I then decided to go ahead and paint and glitter the bottom the same black as I did these black squares, and I'm using a bigger angled brush here. It just made it go a lot faster, and that way your paint isn't drying super fast in between. You can grab a little bit more paint at a time, and this is sped up, you guys, so definitely this takes a minute to get a good crisp line around, and I'm nestling right up under that bottom row of black squares. Get paint on all of it, and then dump my glitter on, and then I let it dry for about 20 minutes to a half hour and went right back in for another coat. After this layer with the Starry Night glitter from Grateful Glitters dries completely, I'm going to come back in and brush the snot out of it, making sure I get as much of that loose glitter off as I possibly can. And then I'm going to mix some white acrylic paint into some Mod Podge. It's just going to provide a good opaque solid base for this, and it's going to allow the glitter to be adhered. And then I'm going to just ever so carefully, this is where those techniques from that buffalo check video are going to come in handy. I'm going to come in ever so carefully right up next to the side of the black, dab on just a little bit of paint at a time, and then I'm using Marshmallow, also from Grateful Glitters, as the white glitter in this design. So again, just take your time, get it all on there, kind of tap it in, and then turn your cup and tap the rest of it off. And once I get through this whole first side, it's dry again, so I just go back in for a second coat. And I did have a couple of like little mishaps to where I accidentally blooped the black right in the middle. I'll show you guys how to fix that here in a second. After this layer, something I did not do that I would recommend doing, let it dry completely, really brush it off, and then seal it. I forgot to seal it. So when I went in to fix the black or the white spots and any like lines that might have been a little jagged, when I put the black back over, I wound up getting black in my white paint, so it wasn't as crisp and clear as I had hoped it would be. It still turned out cute, but it could have been just a little bit better. So definitely save your work and take the time to seal it. So like I said, I just went in here and used some black paint, fixed any lines, and then that little bloop of white there, and then glittered back over it. Let this completely dry for about 2 hours. After that dries, we're going to come in and brush the snot out of it again, and I would highly recommend sealing this again before you move into your epoxy. You don't want your black glitter into your white glitter. I then mixed up 30 milliliters of Artistry Fast Set Epoxy, let that cure for an hour, and came back in with another 30 milliliters of Artistry Epoxy. I wasn't able to get back to it for a couple of days, but you should only have to let it cure for about 4 hours after that. So then I take it downstairs, and I'm using an 80 grit sandpaper on my palm sander to reveal just a small amount of stainless steel around the rim so we can get a good adhesion on those final coats of epoxy. And because I had not been able to get to this cup for a couple of days, I just took some 220 grit sandpaper and roughed up the side a little bit to be able to give that next coat of epoxy something to grip onto. And then on this bottom rim, I take this same 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to kind of anchor the sandpaper in my palm like this, in between my pinky and my thumb. And then I'm just kind of rolling my wrist, and with just a little bit of pressure, knocking off just a little bit of the sharpness of this rim. We're not looking for completely smooth because we're going to be adding another 1 to 2 layers of epoxy. So then I take it upstairs and I wash and dry it, and then I'm moving into the vinyl. This is Oracal 651 vinyl that I've cut at 0.2 by 11.5 inches, and I'm lining it up just where that green meets the checkered flag. I then move into the neon green, which I have cut at 0.10 by the same 11.5 inches long, and I try to nestle that just right in the center of that bottom black pinstriping to get a really good equal amount of black on both sides of this neon green. Once I've got this part done, I move on to the other decals. The Double Gun Race Team that I'm going to put on the neon green side, I just, like I did in the last video, kind of anchor it down, measuring on all sides to make sure I'm straight. And then I go ahead and seal this with a coat of gloss polyacrylic. Seal all the vinyl, making sure that I get all directions so I've got a good seal. And then I go ahead and put a coat of epoxy over this. And that is because on the next step, I'm actually going to be doing what's called a bleach spray or a bleach spot. And I want to make sure that I don't have any roughed up surface on my cup exposed at all, because the paint gets stuck in those and you can't get it out. And then it becomes very clear when you put the next coat of epoxy on, and then it's trapped, you can't get it out. So you definitely want a super smooth surface before you do the bleach spot. And I've got a video that I'll link in the description that goes into more detail about the bleach spot. Definitely check out that video in the description if you need help with those bleach spots. guys, so I got this bundle from Creative Fabrica, and I will leave a link to the entire bundle in the description. But definitely also, if you haven't already, take advantage of that link for your entire first month membership for only $1. That gives you full access to the entire website, 3 million graphics, fonts, crafts, all for $1, and then you can renew at $19 instead of the normal $29. Let me know if you have any questions on that. But so I downloaded all of these into my program. I'm going to be using this one right here because it's got a transparent background, and I've already sprayed that white bleach spot because we have the checkered flag behind it, and I want to make sure that this shows up really clearly and not super jumbled. So let me ungroup this and pull it over onto my workspace. And then the reason I didn't use this one here is this one says hashtag race life. And I actually want it to say hashtag race wife. So I'm just going to type this out. Hashtag race wife. Obviously it's going to be too big for right this moment. Let's change it to black. Shrink it down so it lines up a little better here. And then let's change the font over here at the text style panel. And we are going to be using Mandala Handmade. I just thought it was kind of a similar font, but without it being exact. And then I'm just going to kind of line it up where I think I want it to go. You can use your arrow keys to nudge over if you need to. I want it to be very similar to this one, so maybe I will bring this one over so I can get a good visual here. Get a good area of where I want it to be placed. This one actually is a little bit further over. Maybe just a skosh bigger. Alrighty, that looks good to me. So I am just going to group that and then get my paper ready to print. I'm going to print it on a Haipu water slide paper, and I will link another video down below if you need help with printing water slide. But moving on. After that last coat of epoxy cures, I take this outside and I spray it with a white gloss spray paint from Rust-Oleum. That's what I use for my bleach spot. And then I come back in, let it dry completely, and while it's drying, I'm going to go ahead and prepare my final number 57 number here. It's that triple layer one. So just like in the last video, I use painter's tape and anchor down the bottom and the middle layer, and then I use wax paper in between each one with a little bit of transfer tape hanging off the top of each layer to allow me to line up each of these numbers with the one underneath of it. And then I peel up the transfer tape off of the wax paper and then adhere it down onto that bottom number. After I kind of work that backing free to make sure I don't have any craziness on the cup when I'm trying to adhere it, I go ahead and line up my decal. I'm going to cut off part of the backing, use the hinge method, and place it down, take the other part of the backing and smooth it out and remove that transfer tape straight back on itself so I don't introduce bubbles. So I'm using Haipu water slide with an image that I got from Creative Fabrica. I will definitely link it down in the description below. I am just going to soak it for probably about 10 to 15 seconds, place some water on my cup, and then slide it right off my backing and smooth out any bubbles or wrinkles or anything like that, and then let it completely dry. I'm going to come back in with a coat of polyacrylic gloss and making sure I get all sides again of both this water slide, that paint underneath, and then that number 57 triple layered decal that we put down below. I then let that fully dry and then start the final epoxy layers. In the first of the last 2 layers of epoxy, I am going to add in this over the rainbow glitter additive, just a tiniest little bit. You guys see me use this in a ton of videos. I love, love, love the just tiny bit of shimmer that it gives. So you're going to mix it up, make sure it's good and incorporated, use a tack cloth to remove anything that's on your cup for this final layer, and then apply this last coat of epoxy like you would any others. Let that cure for 1 hour because it's fast set epoxy, and then come in with a second layer, let that one cure for 4 hours, and then it is done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this double tutorial on a man and female cup, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let me know if this is something you guys would enjoy seeing more of in the future, and let me know if there's any suggestions you have for future videos. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.